Matthew Plowman. No, I'll cut it. I will cut it. I will cut it. So the thing is keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. So by the time that this comes out,
I know.
the announcement will be out. And I was like, okay. Let me just end off on that. So you're good. You're good. What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. Day number 1 of the Cardano Summit taking place in Dubai. To my left, none other than CEO of Moneta, Matthew Plowman.
Hey, Fried, thanks for having me on the channel again. I appreciate it.
It is always a pleasure. Now, without any further ado, let's talk about USDM and where you guys currently stand. I feel like there's been so much going on. Where do you want to start?
There's been a lot of new developments. So on-chain liquidity keeps growing. We looked today on DEX Hunter. Looks like we have about 25, 26 million ADA of on-chain liquidity in the DEX pools. We have around 7 to 8, almost $8 million in the reserve now. And so it's still small, still growing. And we hope that as we increase our regulatory footprint, as we increase our ability to take on new users, we'll have a whole lot more ability for folks to come and bring liquidity into the USDM ecosystem.
Nice. And congrats, by the way, on the recent listing on DeFi Llama.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I feel like that was something that a lot of people had questions about, and it's finally there. For anybody who wants to actually check out the total amount of USDM on chain, I believe you can do that there also through the Charlie 3 developer portal. All right. Now, as of late, you guys have released your monthly newsletters. In the last one, there was the recent onboarding of Georgia.
Yes.
Can you give us an update about where things stand when it comes to individual states within the U.S. onboarding USDM?
Right. So for the past year and a half or so, we've been approaching individual states, working with the regulators in those states to understand how they would treat USDM if we were to serve people who live in those states or are present in those states. And we recently got word back from the state of Georgia that we're clear to operate in Georgia. So that adds 19 states to the list. And, we expect to have more jurisdictions very soon. And that should just really increase the footprint for USDM. We're also submitting applications in the other states that we need to. So we expect to be 50 state compliant sometime mid next year, maybe 48, 49 states. There's a couple that are tricky, like New York, which has a long backlog. Adding Georgia is very important. Georgia's a great state, huge state. It's got some great big cities, large Cardano user base there. So we're hoping that as we bring on more states, more users, then we'll be able to increase the adoption of USDM, increase the liquidity on Cardano, increase the utility for people who want to send payments to their friends or engage in DeFi or do whatever they want to do with dollars on chain on Cardano. We've had some great conversations here at the summit. We've talked with a number of different sort of large international organizations that would be interested in using USDM for various purposes. And so we see opportunities in the US we see opportunities within the Cardano community. We also see opportunities to bring some new entities into the Cardano community that are outside of the US. And so there's a lot to do. And this conference is really making a big difference.
So in terms of expectations, you've mentioned 48 states, maybe 49-ish, depending on some of them being a little bit more difficult to get adoption in. What states come next after Georgia?
Well, we have kind of a list that we're going through. I don't have the exact ones off the top of my head. I think that we can always say like New York will probably be last because they have a big backlog in onboarding crypto companies. They have a lengthy review process. It's not one that we can't pass. It's just one that takes additional time. So we're expecting, call it like mid next year, to be in many of the states. And then what that's going to do is it's going to open up new channels for partners. We have a lot of large banks, a lot of large service providers that people know well and would like to be able to use USDM along these other channels. But those unlock only after we get 50 state adoption or like nearly 50 state adoption.
So you've just mentioned integrations within different states, but there's also integrations within Web3 protocols, with Liquid being the latest to bring you guys on with a brand new market specific to USDM. Any thoughts about that and maybe additional integrations with other lending and borrowing protocols or just DeFi in general in Cardano?
I mean, it's really remarkable if you look at the utilization of USDM on Liquid. I think there's been over $1 million of USDM loaned and borrowed in the ecosystem, and there's still sort of like $150,000 to $200,000 or so of additional supply that's ready to be lent into anybody who wants to go and borrow USDM. There's integrations into YAM4, so people are using that CBLP token to borrow USDM, and then they take the USDM and they lend it over on Liquid, and then they go and they do some stuff on LendFi, and it's weird how people do it. And I don't necessarily want to provide investment advice, but there's a lot of neat opportunities for people to use USDM because it's that comfortable fiat-backed stablecoin that everybody knows and is comfortable with, understands that the one-to-one backing is enforced by the smart contracts and the independent oracle and the on-chain reserve transparency, and the way that we manage the fiat side is really above board. So all those things really come together to make USDM a nice ecosystem component for Cardano.
Nice. Now let's switch gears and talk a little bit more about onboarding. Let's start with businesses first. So businesses have been able to mint, I think, for over the last maybe 6 months now.
Yep.
Any new updates when it comes to their minting process, maybe onboarding new businesses or maybe processes changing? What have you guys been able to learn over the course of the last few months?
Yeah, we keep onboarding new business mentors who want to come in and either mint or burn USDM for various reasons. They want, they either take USDM as payment and they need to turn it to cash, or they want to go and mint some USDM and engage in on-chain transactions. So there's been some more additions there. We kind of worked through it. It's the know your business side of it is a little more intensive than just a simple KYC for a person, but the retail user beta is now kind of underway. We're accepting applications for people that are in those 19 states. We're trying to get a diverse range of individuals in various states, individuals with different banks. So we want to understand how these banks interact with our service provider Plaid, and how the process is sort of on our back end when we want to burn and send money to these accounts. What's that going to look like? So we want to understand edge cases. We want to understand user experience. And so we're, call it 50 to 100 different retail users that we're going to bring in. We've had plenty of applications and people are still submitting sort of this retail beta application. We expect to start making some decisions in early mid-November.
So with respect to the retail onboarding, you've mentioned the fact that people have applied. When can they actually start? And then how much testing do you guys need to sort of confirm or to get comfortable with actually bringing this online for anybody or launching on the mainnet per se?
Yeah, from our side, there are a few different hurdles to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is sort of the back end functioning of the banks and the way that they experience the platform. The current version of the USDM app that we're launching is very rough, and the user experience is kind of clunky. It's fine for business users because they just come and they mint once or twice and then that's it. But for a retail user to come and expect the type of attention and detail in their status of their order and the status of the USDM and where the USD is and whether the wire's been received or whether the wire's been sent, and there's all kinds of compliance issues need to be overcome too when you're dealing with people at scale. So we'll have people onboarded into the kind of the V1 of the app, and at the same time we're creating a V2 of the front end that will look a lot better, will be a lot more communicative, a lot more informative for people who want to understand what's happening with their order flow. And that kind of speaks to scalability, because if we're having to respond to customer service inquiries on various things with 100, 200, 500 users, 1,000 users, whatever it is that we end up scaling to, we need to make sure that the platform informs people so that they don't have to come to us manually, that we can just go to them individually and have them go to the platform and understand where things are. So those types of things are going to take a little bit of time to build, but this is why we get the feedback from the beta users so that we can understand what they want and then build according to what feedback they've provided.
And for anybody who's interested in becoming a beta user, I'll leave the links to that particular form down below.
Yep.
I covered it in a previous video. It's pretty simple. And one thing I can definitely appreciate about that was the long, lengthy list of approved banks that you guys can actually support.
Oh, it's thousands. Yeah, it's huge.
And so my thing is after retail, what comes next for you guys? I know there's been talks about Mavikai, and I think that's sort of a different direction. But with USDM, Moneta, what are you guys looking to sort of jump into after this next big push?
Yeah, if you want to kind of dive into the various things that USDM or the Moneta world is going to be, it'll largely be, think about payments, think about conducting your financial life on chain, and then having that also interact with the real world. So if it's at the register payments, if it's online payments through, say, a Shopify integration, if it's any kind of sort of value transfer that you would want to do, that you want to have self-sovereignty over your own funds in the blockchain world, and then also shift it to the off-chain world. So Moneta is going to sort of dive down into the full payments stack, from at the register payments to peer-to-peer payments to remittances to those types of use cases that folks are going to want to use it for. So imagine in a future world where instead of using Venmo or PayPal to send payments to your friends, you would use the Moneta app and have a payments portal there that would enable you to slide over to the other person. So that's the type of thing that we're working on with USDM, is really more of real world adoption, making it, because it's a fiat-backed stablecoin, we don't have to do any algorithmic nonsense to get the stability. We just have $1 and you go and you spend it with a debit card, you spend it with a credit card, you go ahead and tap it at the terminal. So all these things are sort of in the development pipeline for what we would like USDM to become within the Moneta branding, and have that be the full stack. So then you kind of look at offshore, you look at different jurisdictions, you look at different countries that also could use dollar payments. You look at different industries and try to penetrate into certain verticals. There's good conversations happening with regard to aid agencies that would need blockchain-based payments to individuals who are in disaster zones that maybe can't be reached by traditional means, but they can have a crypto wallet, they can drop USDM into it. Those kinds of things we want to start adopting more and more and make it into a real world use case for USDM.
Yeah, that's got me very excited. And for some reason, I've never heard that mentioned before. Like, I just thought of USDM as one thing that only did one particular thing, which is, be used as a, fiat-backed stablecoin. But you just mentioned remittance payments, peer-to-peer, transfers, like an app, for example, like Zelle, which I use basically every day to send money to my, family, friends, relatives, whatever the case is. And it sounds like there's going to be a lot of use cases for USDM.
Well, stablecoins, it's really just it's not a use case necessarily for USDM, although that's what we're going to do. It's a use case for stablecoins in general. Mm-hmm. So right now we're talking with various people in developing countries who say, well, we would love to use stablecoins to pay because it doesn't go through the banking system. We don't have to pay additional fees. It's a very simple peer-to-peer payment. And that's the same way that's how Tether's used around the world. That's how USDC is used in many places. And that's the kind of thing that we would like to have happen with USDM as well.
Got it. Noted. Now, earlier you mentioned dollars and the fact that you don't have to do any algorithmic nonsense. To that end, let's maybe end off by discussing liquidity. I know you guys get asked this a lot, but I will say the liquidity has grown, right? So I believe you guys are now either nearing 8 or maybe just a little bit above $8 million minted on chain, if I'm not mistaken.
It's under 8, but it's close, yeah.
So what's being done to get that to 100, 200, 300 million now?
Well, a lot of these use cases, right? So you need to be able to show value for value. And if you're going to have $1 locked up into a stablecoin, then you want to make sure that $1 is useful for you. So making the USDM more useful is going to, in turn, bring more users to Cardano, bring more users onto the chain. So we're looking at, various jurisdictions that are in need of this. We're in Dubai, like to meet with the regulators in Abu Dhabi. The central bank of the Emirates is, we'll be working with various official parties to see about, other jurisdictions that we can then operate in. So I think the more we can expand our user base, the more the on-chain liquidity app expands. And that just sort of size begets size, adoption begets adoption. And you start with this beneficial role.
Speaking of expansion, I hear that there's some pretty big news that'll be dropping soon. So I'll turn it over to you. Maybe just close us out with a little bit of a tease, or maybe just some closing thoughts on anything else that you think is of importance.
Well, we'll have an announcement tomorrow regarding very important jurisdiction for USDM. And currently there's a very large stablecoin that's compliant with certain regulatory framework. And there's only one, and hopefully there'll be 2 soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will do it here for updates on USDM, the fiat-backed stablecoin here launched on Cardano. I want to thank Matthew Plowman, the president again of Moneta, for joining me here. As always, I feel like this is a tradition now. We've done this at about every single event, I think, this year.
Well, you cover all of the newsmakers, and sometimes we don't make news, but sometimes we do. And I think we're about to.
Yeah, no. And shout out to Jillian for the wonderful newsletters. Links to that will be left down below. If you guys are not already in the loop, there's a monthly breakdown of everything that they've accomplished month over month. That will do it here, though, for today's update. Again, thank you, Matt. If you guys have enjoyed watching this particular video, number one, make sure to smash that thumbs up. Number 2, make sure to consider subscribing. And then number 3, if you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. I'll make sure to get those over to Matt and team. That said, and as always, we'll see you all in the next one. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.